The USS Flier, a Gato-class submarine, was the sole vessel in the United States Navy to bear the name Flier. Her keel was laid on October 30, 1942 by the Electric Boat Company in Groton, Connecticut. She was launched on July 11, 1943 and commissioned on October 18, 1943. After initial operations off New London and Newport, Flier set sail for the Pacific on November 24th. She transited the Panama Canal and docked at Pier 3, Berth A, Naval Operating Base, NOB, Coco Solo on December 2nd. 3 days later, she departed Coco Solo and navigated through the canal to NOB Balboa, mooring at 1410. The following morning at 0632, Flier headed for Pearl Harbor, territory of Hawaii. Over the next 2 weeks, Flier conducted drills and training dives, arriving at Pearl Harbor on December 20th. During her stay in the Hawaiian Islands, she underwent 3 weeks of repairs, training, and loading for her first war patrol. She departed for Midway Atoll on January 12, 1944. As Flier approached Midway at 14:15 on January 16, 1944, she received instructions to wait for a harbor pilot aboard the harbor tug Negwagan. Unfortunately, heavy seas made the rendezvous impossible. At 1500, Negwagan directed the submarine to follow her into Midway Channel. Amid a passing rain squall, Flier entered the channel at 1523 but ran aground a minute later. Over the next 2 hours, heavy seas pushed her further onto the shoal east of the channel. After running aground, Flier attempted to drop anchor. While the anchor detail was on the submarine's forecastle, a large wave crashed over the deck, sweeping Torpedo Man's mate, First Class Clyde A. Gerber, and Torpedo Man's mate, James Francis P. James Call, overboard. Gerber managed to swim to a sand spit in the channel, where he was later rescued. Tragically, Call, last seen off Flier's port side, did not survive. His remains were recovered and buried at sea 4 days later on January 20th. Around 1530, Flier reported her situation to the submarine force, Pacific Fleet Subordinate Command, Midway. 30 minutes later, the submarine rescue ship Macaw departed Midway Lagoon to assist. At 15:15, Macaw anchored in Midway Channel near the No. 2 entrance buoy. However, her position in the channel hindered initial attempts to attach a tow line to the stranded submarine. 30 minutes later, Macaw shifted approximately 75 to 100 feet northwest of the channel buoy and made another rescue attempt. The strain from 26-knot winds and rough seas caused 75 fathoms of Macaw's anchor chain to run out, forcing her to cut the chain and abort the second rescue attempt. While repositioning for a third attempt, Macaw ran aground at 1612 on January 16, 1944. With the Macaw stranded, Comsubpac ordered the submarine rescue ship Florican to depart Oahu and head to Midway at best speed. Florican arrived at the atoll on January 19, 1944, 3 days later. On January 22, 1944, as Florican prepared to tow the Flier, she encountered a problem. The large shackle on her 2-inch tow wire was too big to fit through Flier's bullnose. To resolve this, Florican attached a 1.5-inch wire pendant to her tow wire and connected it to a towing bridle on the submarine. Florican successfully refloated the submarine, and at 15:45, with the submarine chaser PC-602 as an escort, began the journey back to Pearl Harbor. As they proceeded, heavy seas gradually wore down the tow wire between the two vessels. The wire finally snapped at 0613 on January 23, 1944. Florican moved upwind and, after 3 attempts, managed to pass a messenger line to Flier using a rope gun. Flier reattached the tow line several hours later using both of her capstans. As the convoy neared the Hawaiian Islands, the escort vessel Dion joined them at 0245 on January 30th. On February 1, 1944, Comsubpac convened a court of inquiry on board Bushnell to investigate the grounding. After 5 days of testimony and 2 days of deliberations, the court issued its opinion on February 8th, holding Commander Crowley responsible for the grounding. However, the court also determined that the incident was not due to negligence on the part of Crowley or his crew. Initially towed to Pearl Harbor for temporary repairs, Flier then proceeded to the Mare Island Navy Yard, arriving on February 16, 1944. Over the next several weeks, workers at Mare Island repaired the submarine's damage and upgraded her radar. Flier returned to the Hawaiian Islands on May 8, where she underwent 10 days of voyage repairs and training. On May 21, 1944, escorted by the submarine chaser PC-602, Flier departed Pearl Harbor following TF-17 Operation Order 171-44 at 1100. She released her escort at 2000 and set course for Johnston Atoll, arriving at 1534 on May 23. After refueling, she sailed towards her patrol area at 1830, conducting fire control drills and training dives over the following days. While patrolling the Philippine Sea on the evening of June 3-4, 1944, Flier detected multiple enemy vessels. At 1918, she targeted a Japanese convoy heading south-southwest. The next morning at 05:01, the submarine reached periscope depth and launched a 3-torpedo spread at 2 Japanese cargo ships. 2 torpedoes struck the 10,380-ton Hakusan Maru, while one hit a second, unidentified cargo ship. In response, enemy warships converged on Flier's location, dropping 34 depth charges over the next hour and a half. Flier eventually surfaced and cleared the area by 10:20. In an attempt to regain contact with the convoy, Flier returned to the attack site on the evening of June 4-5. Around 10:30 on the morning of June 5, she recovered Japanese documents and a Sperry Mark 15 gyro compass from the cargo ship sunk the previous day. Flier spent the next 2 days unsuccessfully searching for enemy merchant vessels. Flier passed through the Balabac Strait early on June 8, 1944, and began patrolling the waters off Luzon. After several days without success, she sighted smoke on June 13, 1944. The submarine submerged and moved toward the contact, which was soon identified as a large convoy of 11 merchant vessels escorted by 6 Japanese warships. As Flier attempted to maneuver between the convoy and the shore, she temporarily lost power to her stern diving planes from 1418 to 1429. At 1452, she fired torpedoes from her 4 stern tubes at the 5,135-ton Marifu Maru. While repositioning for a second attack, the crew heard 2 torpedoes hit the tanker. However, a miscommunication between Lieutenant Commander Crowley and his diving officer led to a loss of depth control, preventing a follow-up strike. As the submarine dove deeper, power to the stern diving planes was lost again, forcing the crew to level the boat manually while 105 depth charges exploded above. Flier eventually surfaced and headed toward Manila, Philippine Islands at 1948. She did not encounter another enemy convoy for several more days. At 1600 on June 17, 1944, Flier detected a convoy of 5 cargo ships escorted by 2 warships near the northern coast of Verde Island, Philippines. However, she was unable to close in and fire before losing contact as daylight faded at 2100. After an unsuccessful 2-hour search, she headed for Calavite Pass, arriving at 2318. While passing through Apo East Pass at 1830 on June 22, 1944, Flier spotted 5 columns of smoke 15 miles away. About 3 hours later, she launched a 3-torpedo spread at each of 2 cargo ships, successfully striking both. The damaged vessels dropped out of the convoy and attempted to beach themselves. As the convoy's escorts initiated a depth charge attack, Flier maneuvered around the convoy's port side. At 0:23 on June 23, she successfully torpedoed a medium-sized cargo ship. As her target began to sink by the stern, Flier evaded the pursuing Japanese warships and sailed westward out of the area. Flier set course for the submarine base at Fremantle Harbour, Australia, at 02:07 on June 23, 1944. On June 30th at 03:10, she made radar contact with Robalo. and later that morning at 10:37 she approached a sailboat in the Java Sea. After confirming that the crew aboard the sailboat were not Japanese, the submariners provided them with food and continued toward Fremantle. Flier evaded Japanese patrol boats at both ends of Balabac Strait and exchanged radar signals with Bonefish the following day. She concluded her first war patrol, mooring in Fremantle Harbor at 1200 on July 5th. A refit followed from July 5th to August 2nd. The submarine began her second war patrol at 1500 on August 2nd, 1944. She navigated east of Pearl Bank into the Sulu Sea, starting her patrol at 0300 on August 13. That evening, at 1800, she used bearings from peaks on Balabac and Palawan Islands to determine her position as 50 miles offshore from Balabac Island, Philippines. While sailing approximately 6,700 yards off Camoran Island, a terrific explosion occurred on the starboard side near the forward battery compartment at 2200. The submarine sank within an estimated 20 to 30 seconds as air vented through the conning tower. Crowley and 14 other sailors survived, though tragically, 6 died shortly thereafter. After several hours of swimming in the Sulu Sea, Crowley, Fireman Earl R. Baumgart, Chief Radio Technician Arthur G. Howell, Ensign Alvin E. Jacobson, Lieutenant James W. Little, and motor machinist's mate 3rd Class Wesley B. Miller reached the southern coast of Mantangal Island, Philippines at 1530. They were met by Quartermaster 3rd Class James D. Russo, who had come ashore earlier that day. An 8th survivor, Fire Controlman 2nd Class Donald P. Tremaine, joined them at 1700. After a couple of days on shore, the sailors gathered bamboo, lashed it together with vines to create a 7 by 5 foot raft, and set sail for nearby Bayan Island at 1500 on August 16, 1944. They reached the island just after sunset and spent the night there. Near low tide at 1600 the next afternoon, they embarked on their makeshift raft and crossed a coral reef to reach Gabang Island. On the morning of August 18, 1944, the sailors searched for food and shared a single coconut before setting sail for Bagsuk Island at 1400. 3 hours later, they landed on Apo Island and spent the night in an abandoned house. At sunrise the next morning, 2 local boys guided them inland to an abandoned school where they met Filipino guerrillas. These guerrillas had been ordered to transport stranded Allied civilians, sailors, and airmen to Brooks Point, Palawan. During the meeting, the sailors enjoyed their first meal since the sinking of their submarine 6 days earlier, dining on fish and rice. Commander Crowley and the 7 other survivors departed for Palawan around 1600 on August 20th and arrived at Cape Bulaluyan 8 hours later. They set sail for Brooks Point at noon on August 21st. Due to unfavorable weather, they anchored in the Tuba River for the night, resuming their journey at 1100 the next day and arriving at Brooks Point early on August 23rd. Upon their arrival, Crowley used a radio provided by a U.S. Army Coast Watcher unit to report Flier's fate to Commander Task Force 71. Filipino guerrillas then escorted the sailors to an evacuation point 5 miles inland, where they spent the next 3 days organizing an evacuation plan. On August 29, 1944, Commander 7th Fleet informed Crowley that the submarine Redfin would arrive off Brooks Point the following day. That evening, at 2000 on August 30th, the 8 survivors and 9 other marooned persons set out in 2 small boats, sailing southeastward. They sighted Redfin at 050 and boarded the submarine at 0103. A court of inquiry into the loss of Flier convened at the headquarters of Commander Submarine's 7th Fleet on September 14, 1944. After 3 days of testimony, the court concluded that the submarine sank due to an external underwater source, not launched by a Japanese ship or aircraft. However, the court could not definitively determine whether Flier struck a mine or was hit by a submarine-launched torpedo. Flier was officially removed from the Naval Vessel Register on September 23, 1944. The Navy awarded Commander Crowley the Navy Cross on October 26, 1944, and the Legion of Merit on September 11, 1945. Flier's sole completed war patrol was deemed successful, and she is credited with sinking 10,380 gross registered tons of Japanese shipping. On February 1, 2009, the U.S. Navy announced the discovery of Flier near the Balabac Strait in the Philippines. The wreck of a Gato-class submarine was found during an expedition by YAP Films based partly on information provided by a survivor of Flier's sinking. Further research by the Naval History and Heritage Command revealed that no other submarine, American or Japanese, had been reported lost in that vicinity. Additionally, footage of the wreck showed a gun mount and radar antenna matching those seen in contemporary photographs of Flier. The submarine rests in 330 feet of water with 79 souls still on board, on eternal patrol.